Well, all right. Did any of y'all do the homework from last week? I only ask because that changes how we start.
My dog ate it.
I tried.
Aaron's dog ate mine too.
Well, I also didn't get around to it, and it's just been one of those weeks. So I'm not going to be judgmental on anything about that. But we will start off with this. Have you ever made a 5-year plan? How did it go? Or maybe not 5 years, but a long-term plan. Did you, I don't know, set a goal for yourself and you said, well, when I'm this age, I want all of these things to be true?
Huh. You can set them, but it doesn't happen.
Sure.
I can't even think a whole day ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a planner, and so it's one of those, I hate not having a plan. Like days like today, it's one of those I wish I had planned it out a little bit more. Or actually, this whole week's been one of those I wish I had like written down what I need to do and when I plan on doing it and when I'm actually going to be free to have people walk into my office and talk to me for hours. Not that it was a bad conversation. It's just one of those. There's that part of me that it drove me insane. Well, now my whole day is thrown off. I don't know what I'm doing. Which then is ironic because then I'm always like, man, I wish someone would like plan this. Like, let's not wait for the last second. Let's plan this now while we have time. Can we get ahead? But then it's always one of those. Even though I am the planner, it seems like I'm still doing a lot of things the last second. And that's kind of the point we're going to be talking about tonight. I figured this would be a good place to end our study of the Proverbs. We still had like 5 chapters that were in that book that I was trying to base it off of. And I thought, yeah, we could do 2 chapters a week. We did 2 chapters like the first night, and that was it. And that was because it was pretty easy to get through the introduction. Anyway, so tonight the kind of focus, and it's not a very long lesson, so we'll probably get out early again. But the idea was this idea of planning, this idea of looking ahead, especially because, well, this is the New Year's. Well, part of the kind of description or selling point for this class was, well, let's start off the year with some wisdom. Let's, as we set resolutions, let's do it wisely. So I figured that would be a good place to end. We're going to be jumping around like we did last week through the Proverbs. But one place we can start this evening is Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 8, which reads, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to you. No, it will be healing to you. No, that's not you, that's yours. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." The question that is in the book that asked to kind of follow in this is this idea of how can we avoid relying on our own understanding or our own wisdom, our own ways, kind of building off that idea of there is that temptation to, I wish I could plan everything out. I will say one key example I had in my life was kind of that graduating high school moment of, well, I know exactly what's going to happen in college. I need to take these classes. And if I do it all right, it's going to be 2 years and I'll be done. And then I was there for a 3rd year and it was very frustrating. And then people are still like, you graduated in 3 years, shut up. There are people who, it takes 6 years to graduate undergrad. But it is one of those reminders of that was my plan, right? I was trying to, oh yeah, it's not going to be a problem taking 21 hours in a semester. And then you took a semester that had 21 hours and you were sitting there, or I guess it was 20, but it was still one of those where you're staring up, looking at it, and you're like, that was insane. Why would I ever think that was a good idea? What are some ways that we can avoid relying on our own understanding or our own wisdom, our own desires to make things the way we want them?
We can read what the Bible says about this particular set of decisions and pray about it. Or we can talk to other people who are older and wiser than us.
But you have to have a plan. I'm going back to your first comments there.
Sure.
If you don't have a plan, nothing ever gets done.
Sure.
So, and I don't know how that fits in with this question, but I just know in my business, if I don't have a plan, nothing will happen. And I know what I need to do tomorrow, but I still have to write it down so I remember what to do.
Yeah.
But
I think a big part of it is coming to decisions and things with an attitude of humility and also taking accountability when you do rely on your own understanding and then you have to deal with the consequences of it.
Well, that's kind of where we're going. So we might, we'll go ahead and kind of talk about some of the next verses that were brought up. But the next few verses are, again, we're jumping around. In Proverbs 20, verse 24, a man's steps are from the Lord. How then can man understand his way? And then in Proverbs 21:31, the horse is made ready for the day in battle, but victory belongs unto the Lord. And Ashley, since you brought it up, I'm not going to put you necessarily on the spot, but there aren't many of us, so I'm assuming you will have to answer this question. How does humility shape our ambition for success?
Well, our success won't be necessarily self-fulfilling in the case of humility for something other than ourselves. And we'll acknowledge that the results are not necessarily our own doing.
It goes back to that verse you just have with the horse. And the horse is not in control where he's going, the rider is in control where the horse is going. So we allow the Lord to guide us. We have to be humble enough to let the Lord guide us for the path.
Yeah.
Quit looking at the answer.
Actually, he wants your answer.
You brought up humility, Ashley.
Well, they said it. It kind of changes your motivation. I am a pretty prideful person, and it kicks me in the butt a lot because that's what pride does. And so if you're doing things to bring all the glory to yourself, that's kind of a bottomless pit. You're not going to find fulfillment, and your success is not going to be the same as if you're doing it to serve others and to serve God. It's also a little bit comforting to know that my success doesn't have to weigh on my ability because I'm not enough without God.
Yeah. That's a good point. The next kind of section of Proverbs that is brought up is Proverbs 15:33, which is the last verse of Proverbs 15, and then into the first couple verses of Proverbs 16, which reads, "The fear of the Lord is instruction and wisdom, and humility comes before honor. The plans of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the Spirit. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. For the Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. Everyone who is arrogant in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Be assured, he will not go unpunished. By steadfast love and faithfulness, iniquity is atoned for, and by the fear of the Lord, one turns away from evil. When a man's ways pleases the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. The heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. How would you describe yourself? Would you say you prefer to go with the flow, or are you more of a make it happen kind of person?
Yes.
I'm a make it happen to a fault.
I think I'm gonna go with the flow to a fault. Things just happen to me.
I'm a make it happen kind of person, and it drives me crazy working with people who are more of a go with the flow people. And they're like, oh no, that it can wait. We're still like 3 weeks out. And you're sitting there and it's like, yeah, we're 3 weeks out from a major event. Like, let's put some actual work into this now. Let's not wait till the night before. But then it's always weird. I guess in my master's program, I don't come off that way to my classmates, which I have to sit there and think, have you been paying attention? Like, I am very much like anxious about all this. I need answers. I'm not a go with the flow person, but I've heard several times from my classmates in my graduate program, oh man, Bergan, you're such a calm presence. You just go along with anything. I'm like, again, who are you talking to? This is not, I don't see myself as a calm and go with the flow kind of person. I definitely like to be able to control and make it happen, and everything has to fit the way I think it needs to fit. But
What happens when it doesn't?
it is an uncomfortable conflict. It is one of those where, depending on what it is, I may have been like really gearing up for something to work out really well. And I was forcing it, and then when it doesn't work out, I'm very upset. And it's aggravating. It's one of those, I wish this would have worked out.
You just
but
get discouraged and quit?
it's hard to keep those, it's hard to keep some of those ideas out of my head. For example, let's just take it back to Greek, because of course, let's do that. So I was in the third semester of Greek at the graduate level last semester. Well, last fall, I was also in the third semester Greek at the graduate level. And I was told, you're not good enough and you'll clearly struggle in this class. And why don't you drop down and take first and second semester again? It wasn't because I had already taken it. I basically tested out of first and second semester. And so it was one of those, go back through, relearn the basics, grow in your confidence, and come and attack it again. And it was one of those, yes, there's a lot of faults with how I went about studying for some of my quizzes and tests last semester, but it was still one of those, there was very much the, well, if I just do it this way, and my plan works out great, I'll be fine, I'll pass, there will be no struggle. And then you're sitting there and you put in the hours for the midterm and you still don't get the score you want, and then you work, and you study for all the quizzes, and you get ready for the final, and you go through all the vocab and all of that, and then you get to the final and you barely improved your score from the midterm. And it's one of those, that was a discouraging moment. And it was one of those, I worked so hard doing it the way I thought I needed to do it. I did go through the flashcards so many times, and I did do it every day, and I did do all this, like, and I set up the plan, and I carved out the time that I was supposed to. Why is this not working? And there was that frustration. But at the same time, nowhere in that was I really talking to God through it until it was basically the night before the final, where I was like, God, please help me pass it. But I didn't bring him in until it was almost the end. Like I had tried to do it my way, and I really wasn't even asking God for it to go his way. I was asking him to give validity to my plan and give it the payoff that I wanted. And so that was kind of part of that. But the next question building off of that is, was there anything in those couple verses that challenges you or stood out to you in that? And we can reread it if we need to, but anything about planning or kind of the way you go about things in your life? Let's read it again. I might as well. The fear of the Lord is instruction and wisdom, and humility comes before honor. The plans of the heart belong to man, but the answers of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. Everyone who is arrogant in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Be assured, he will not go unpunished. By steadfast love and faithfulness, iniquity is atoned for. And by the fear of the Lord, one turns away from evil. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than a great revenue with injustice. The heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps.
That last verse, where man's plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. It's not all we plan, it's what the Lord guides us. Every time I make a plan, it gets diverted because that's where he wants me to go somewhere else. So that is the challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
Asking the Lord before I start is a problem.
Yeah.
I think I got this, it's not a problem. Because I've been doing some of the things that I've been doing for 50, 60 years, and I don't need God.
It's true.
And sometimes it turns into a big mess.
I get you. It's that is a step that I know I frequently leave out of my plans. I frequently, whether it's setting up an agenda for the day or whatever it is, I frequently forget to turn it over to God and let that be the first thing I do, not the last as things are crumbling before me and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, I might as well pray. It's more of, I should have been praying from the start. So.
Well, you're not in the boat by yourself.
I'm sure I'm not.
kind of feel called out by verse 5.
Do you want to read it?
No. Okay. Everyone who is arrogant in his heart is an abomination to the Lord. Be assured he will not go unpunished. That was number 5. Proverbs 16.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I've ever been so swiftly humbled as the time when I was complaining about someone's incompetence, and I promptly dropped a glass bowl.
Yeah.
I learned something there.
It's one of those open mouth insert foot. And how many times are we ever caught in saying something and you find yourself having your foot stuck in your mouth just because actually now I'm actually opening the door for someone to criticize myself and what I've been doing, and being reminded of you're nothing, like, or you're not perfect either. You have flaws too. So let's add another wrinkle. Proverbs 16:9 again reads, "The heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." Also in Proverbs, this is Proverbs 4:26, "Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure." What does Proverbs 16:9 and 4:26 say about the relationship between our actions and God's actions?
I think it goes back to that idea of success being the Lord's. So when we align our will with God's, we're successful because we're doing what He's wanting us to do. And when we're doing things to glorify ourselves or whatever else, the path leads to destruction.
Yeah. So how should Proverbs 16, 1 through 9 shape the way we plan?
Just ensure that it's not our plan, it's the follow. Just to think before we act.
Yeah. Second to last question. Describe a time when you set a long-term goal that you did not meet. And then I want you to think about, how was God at work in that?
Well, I kind of wanted to be a diagnostic radiologist. But after being in college, I realized I wasn't cut out for medical school. Couldn't do all the extracurricular things on top of all the other stuff I was doing. And primary, by all the other stuff, I meant just by basic classes and not dying during doing that, so.
Sure.
I guess God closed that door, but it was probably for the best, because I probably would have made myself sick doing all the extra stuff.
Well, I moved back from Wyoming to try to help my dad. And, that was a long-term goal, which it didn't, I didn't mean that. I mean, I helped, but not to the degree that I wanted to. And looking back, God was at work chiseling me down to, hey, he doesn't need help with this particular item. He needs help with this particular item. And I think he was working on my father too. So it just took a long time for that to soak in.
One of the, I kind of mentioned this earlier, one of the, I guess, somewhat foolish plans I made as a high schooler was, oh, it's only going to take me 2 years because I already am coming in with my associate's degree. I'm going to get through my bachelor's degree, no problem. It'll be 2 years and I'm done. But then looking back, it's probably good that it took me 3 years, because I struggled finding a job being 1 year younger than all the other college graduates, let alone if I was 2 years younger. And it also allowed me to have more opportunities in taking internships and doing that. But then also, it was one of those, thinking about it, if I didn't take 3 years, I would never have met Bill, who would never have encouraged me to apply to a job at Greenlawn. And I would not be here, I'd be somewhere else. Not saying that I wouldn't have been doing God's work somewhere else, but it is one of those, God planted me here for a reason, and at the time it didn't make sense. Why is it going to take me an extra school year to get through these classes? I thought I already had this. A lot of these are freshman classes. Why do I have to go back and take them again? But it was one of those, looking at it now, is there's a reason. I was being planted, I was being set up for something that it was going to take its time to come to fruition. And I need to be aware of that.
God's working on us all the time. No matter what your age is, what your plan is.
Yeah.
I was career driven. I was gonna run the art department at local Christian schools, which I did for a couple of years. Filled the program up, and my kids were gonna attend private school at a discounted tuition, which had to start off. They didn't get discounted tuition, and I was only working part-time. They made the position full-time for me because I did such a good job. The Lord allowed that to happen. I had to resign for a little bit due to COVID, and them not being willing to give me discounted tuition for the kids, since it wasn't a full-time job. They asked me to come back, and I was honored and excited, but I only got to be back for a year and a half, because we found out that my daughter has central processing disorder. And so instead of being career driven and focusing more on building myself up in a career, I needed to shift to be family driven and focusing on the kids. Because right now we're still in the process of figuring out Madeline's sensory processing needs, and if she has anything else like autism or ODD and ADHD. And then my son has severe dyslexia. And so instead of them going to private school at a discounted tuition, they're not going to private school at all. We're homeschooling and working through their differences.
Sure.
We plan, but God directs.
Yeah.
plan, but God directs.
And we can even think of stories in the Bible where characters were trying to make their own plans. And it was one of those, hey, actually, you're not going to be doing that anymore. You're going to be doing this thing over here. At least the one that comes directly to mind for me, it seems pretty obvious, is Paul, right? He was going out, my plan is going to be, I'm going to be the best Jew I can. I'm going to be this persecuting figure. I'm going to quash this Christian thing that's over here that's clearly in opposition to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. I'm going to be this champion, and I'm going to win people for God and turn them back to Judaism. And then God said, yeah, you are going to be a champion for me, but not in the way you think you are. You're actually going to take on this extremely difficult task of being a Christian, but not just a Christian, but you're going to have to be the one to go speak to the Gentiles. You're going to have to be this guy who even the other apostles aren't going to necessarily agree with you all the time. They're going to be very cautious of listening to you just because, well, you're the apostle to the Gentiles. You're not dealing with this stuff in Jerusalem. Why should we trust your understanding of circumcision? And yet, it was God's plan to, Paul, this is what you need to be doing. It's not to be this great Jewish champion. You need to be a champion for Christ.
I think about Paul and his arrogance about wanting to be the direction he wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then 3 days he couldn't see.
Yeah.
When Christ touched him, that was how hard does he have to hit us sometime to
Sure.
get our attention.
Yeah, it's not even just the kind of burning bush moment with Moses of this great light that comes down. Paul has to be brought to the humility of now you can't see.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be dependent on someone else until you at least come to the conclusion that I want you to. You need to go find. I just plain was
Yeah.
the guy. You know the guy. All right. We'll probably get out a little early, but this is my last question of the class. What is one thing from Proverbs that you want to apply to your life? I know we didn't go through the whole book, but we did read quite a bit. What is one thing?
One thing that I think in verse 7, it's in the very first chapter, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And that's, we need to be not so afraid of God that we can't speak with Him and include Him in our lives. But if we don't, we'll go down the wrong road every day. Or we can go down the wrong road.
Sure.
That's all I got to say about that.
That's okay. Luckily, there's a lot of things in Proverbs, so even if you don't know exactly what one is, it's probably a good chance it's in there. Just in case you're trying to think of a specific proverb, just kind of a goal. Yeah, I'm sure we could find a proverb that fits it. So.
Like I said earlier, I'm kind of a prideful person and to my detriment all the time. And so 15 and 16 are very close close to my heart because I'm constantly having to work on making sure I'm coming to things with it. One helps me. It keeps me going.
All right, let's go ahead and pray, and then you guys will be dismissed. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this kind of 6-week period that we've been able to spend together, just kind of walking through the Proverbs, spending time talking about not only those opening chapters that have so much instruction and significance, and informing us how and why a walk in wisdom is so important, but also just the past 2 weeks where we've been able to really hit on the ideas of how we speak, how we plan and go about arranging our lives is so impactful for us. God, you have set us on a path as Christians. You've called us to walk that path with wisdom, with humility, and in a way that leads us to mirroring the life of Christ in our lives. God, I pray for everyone here, everyone who's not here, that as we begin this new year, that we are able to be wise and not foolish in how we go about our lives, so that we may be a better light for you, and that we may bring others along this walk together. Thank you for the blessings you've provided us, most importantly, the blessing of your Son, Jesus Christ. In his name we pray.